The final stand. Humanity's last battlefield against aliens. This is it, the last battle, the final stand. If we fail today, humanity dies tomorrow. The war that should have never happened. It started like any other conflict. A misunderstanding, a border dispute, a warning that no one took seriously. And then, the sky opened. Thousands of warships, larger than cities, descended upon Earth. They did not demand surrender. They did not give warnings. They simply attacked, and within days, the world fell apart. The fall of Earth's defenses, the first strike, wiped out our satellites. Communications collapsed. Nations were cut off from each other. Panic spread like wildfire. Then came the airstrikes. Cities burned. Entire countries vanished in an instant. Billions died before they even knew who they were, fighting. Our greatest armies, they lasted hours. Our most advanced weapons, useless. We had spent centuries preparing for war against ourselves. We had never prepared for this. The first defeat at first. We fought back the only way we knew how. With missiles, with tanks, with everything we had. But it wasn't enough. The aliens were faster, stronger, smarter. They didn't just kill soldiers. They erased entire battlefields. The moment we launched a counterattack, they already knew our strategy. It was like they could predict our every move. And so, one by one, our strongholds fell, our leaders vanished, and our world became a graveyard. Humanity's last refuge, the final human survivors retreated to a place no one thought could be defended. A last stronghold, one last city, one last chance. And now, as the alien armada gathers above us preparing for the final strike, we have only one thought. This is where we make our last stand. If we fail today, humanity dies tomorrow. The rise of the alien empire. For centuries we believed we were alone. We built cities. We explored our solar system. We reached for the stars, never once imagining that something was watching. And then, one day they arrived. Not as explorers, not as diplomats, but as conquerors, and our world was never the same. The first signs of doom. It started with the stars. Astronomers noticed something strange. Distant galaxies were disappearing, not fading, not moving, just gone. At first we thought it was an anomaly, but then it happened again and again. Entire star systems erased from the sky. We didn't know why, we didn't know how, and by the time we realized the truth, it was too late. Because the thing that was erasing the stars was coming for us. The arrival of the invaders. They came from beyond the void. Ships larger than mountains, weapons that defied physics, and an army that had conquered countless worlds before us. The first ships appeared in our skies without warning. No radio signals, no attempts at contact. They simply hovered, watching us for days, and then, in an instant, they attacked. The first war against the aliens, our defenses were shattered in minutes. Missiles exploded before they could reach their targets. Fighter jets fell from the sky, engines dead before they even fired a shot. Ground forces were incinerated by energy weapons we couldn't even understand. It wasn't war, it was a massacre. Millions died in the first hour. Entire cities were erased within a day. And humanity? We had no chance. The truth about the invaders. We called them the Harbingers, because that's what they were. A force that didn't just conquer. It erased civilizations from history. And when we studied their technology, we discovered something horrifying. They had been here before, hundreds of thousands of years ago. Before humans, before Earth as we knew it. The ruins we thought were ancient human civilizations? They weren't. They were remnants of a species that had lived here long before. Us, a species the Harbingers had wiped out, and now they had come back to finish the job. The Great Retreat. The war lasted only a few months before humanity was forced to flee. We abandoned our cities. We abandoned our nations. We abandoned Earth itself. Survivors escaped to colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan, but nowhere was safe. The Harbingers followed us. One by one, our colonies fell. We were being hunted across the stars, and with each battle, our numbers dwindled. The desperation of the human race. By the time we reached our last refuge, humanity was no longer an empire. We were a dying species. The last survivors gathered in one final city, the last stronghold of humankind, a fortress built to withstand the end of the world. And now, the Harbingers were coming, not to negotiate, not to enslave, but to finish what they started. The final war begins. We had no more planets to run to, no more ships to escape with. This was it. The final battle, the last stand of humanity. And as the alien fleet darkened the skies, we knew only one thing. We would fight, not for victory, not for survival, but to make sure the Harbingers never forgot what it meant to challenge humanity. And as the alarms blared and the final defense systems activated, we prepared for the last war of mankind. One way or another. This was the end. The war had lasted for years, not months, not days, years. And with every passing moment, humanity lost more. More soldiers, more cities, more hope. The Harbingers were not fighting a war of conquest. They were fighting a war of extinction, and we were losing. The fall of Earth's greatest cities. The first to fall was Beijing. The attack lasted only 7 minutes. 7 minutes to wipe out 30 million people. Next came London. A fleet of Harbinger warships descended from the clouds, releasing bioweapons that turned the streets into graveyards of dust. Then, New York. They didn't destroy it. They simply took it. One day the city was there. The next, it was gone, as if it had never existed. The failure of humanity's greatest weapons, we threw everything we had at them. Nuclear warheads, orbital cannons, biological warfare. None of it worked. The Harbingers weren't just technologically superior. They were always one step ahead. Every counterattack we launched, they had already predicted it. Every defense system we built, they had already bypassed it. It was as if they had fought this war before. And in truth, they had. The betrayal of the allied species, at first, we weren't alone. Other alien species had fought alongside us. The Cathari, the Valaks, the Zephrons. They had suffered losses too. They had promised to stand with us. But when it became clear that humanity was doomed, they abandoned us. The Cathari made a secret peace treaty with the Harbingers. The Valaks fled to the outer rim of the galaxy. And the Zephrons, they turned against us. Instead of fighting, they helped the Harbingers hunt us down. They called it choosing the winning side. We called it betrayal. And so, in our darkest hour, we stood alone. The fall of Earth. The battle for Earth was our final attempt to stop them. We deployed every remaining warship, activated every hidden weapon, mobilized every last soldier, and for a moment, just a moment, it seemed like we had a chance. We shot down thousands of their ships, destroyed entire armadas, pushed them back, and then they unleashed their true power. A single Harbinger mothership larger than a moon entered Earth's atmosphere. It didn't fire a single shot. Instead, it released a pulse. a wave of energy that covered the entire planet. And within seconds, every electronic system on Earth shut down. Satellites, defense systems, weapons, everything. We were blinded, defenseless. And then, the sky turned red. A storm of fire and light rained down upon Earth. Cities burned, oceans boiled, mountains crumbled, and within hours, the planet was nothing more than ash. The last survivors. We had lost Earth. But not all of us had died. Some had escaped. A fleet of hundreds of ships carrying the last survivors of humanity fled into the cold darkness of space. We had nowhere to go, no home, no future. But we were still alive, and as long as we breathed, we would keep fighting. The human exodus. For years, we drifted, moving from system to system, avoiding Harbinger patrols, searching for a place to rebuild, a place to make our final stand, and then we found it. A planet hidden in the depths of a dying star system, a world where no Harbinger had ever set foot, a place we could turn into a fortress. We called it Exile, and from there, we began to prepare, to build, to train, to fight. Because this war wasn't over, not yet. The final plan, by the time the Harbingers found us again, we were ready. They thought they had destroyed us, thought we were finished, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had left survivors, and as long as there was one human left, the fight would never be over. The last battlefield now, as their warships gather in the skies above Exile, preparing for their final attack. We wait, weapons ready, armies prepared, hearts filled with rage. This is it, the final battlefield, the last stand of humanity, one last war, one last fight. And this time, we're taking all of them with us. The final stand begins. This was it, the last battlefield, the place where humanity would fight its final war, where we would either win or die trying. The Harbingers had found us. Their fleet darkened the sky of Exile, the planet that had become our last refuge. Their motherships, colossal titans of war, cast shadows that stretched for miles, and below them, the last of humanity, armed, ready, prepared to fight until our last breath. This war wasn't about victory anymore. It was about revenge, about making sure the Harbingers never forgot our name, because if we were going to fall today, we would make sure they remembered us forever. The final defense of Exile. We had spent years preparing for this moment. We had built bunkers, defense towers, orbital cannons. We had transformed the entire planet into a fortress. Energy shields strong, enough to withstand planetary bombardment. Anti-air batteries powerful enough to take down capital ships, tunnels and underground bases, ensuring we could fight even if the surface was lost. We knew the Harbingers would come for us. We just didn't know when. And now, as the alarm screamed and the sky filled with fire and warships, we stood our ground. The Harbingers' attack. The first strike came from orbit. Massive plasma lances tore through our defenses, melting steel and stone as if they were nothing. Cities built over years were leveled in seconds. But we didn't break. We fired back. Orbital railguns tore through their battleships. Missiles swarmed their carriers, ripping them apart. EMP blasts disrupted their shields, forcing them to fight us on equal ground. The sky became a battleground of light and destruction, and, for the first time in this entire war, the Harbingers hesitated. They had expected a slaughter, but we had become something more. Not just survivors. Warriors. The ground war begins. Then came the dropships. The Harbingers knew we wouldn't go down easily. They deployed their ground forces, massive, biomechanical creatures bred for war. Towers of living metal and armor, armed with weapons that could disintegrate a soldier in a single shot. But we didn't run. We didn't hide. We fought. Street by street. Building by building. Room by room. Snipers on rooftops took down alien commanders. Demolition teams set traps. In every corridor and street. Heavy artillery blasted through entire enemy lines, and then in the chaos something happened. Something no one expected. The Harbingers started losing. For the first time in history. They weren't winning. The human counterattack, we had one chance. One final push to turn the tide once and for all. Our leaders sent out the command. All forces, charge. Every tank, mech, and battlesuit we had left stormed into the fight. Airships roared overhead, dropping reinforcements straight into the battle. The last of our fleet pushed forward, fighting ship to ship in orbit. The battle turned into a maelstrom of fire, blood, and steel. For every human soldier that fell, 5 more Harbingers died. We fought like monsters, like a species with nothing left to lose. And then, something changed. The Harbingers' desperation. The enemy had never faced a fight like this. They had always crushed their enemies easily. But now, they were trapped in a war they couldn't win. They started making mistakes, breaking formation, losing control. For the first time, they were afraid, and we knew if we kept pushing, we could do what no species had ever done. We could win. The cost of victory, but victory had a price. We had lost too much. Entire divisions wiped out, ships reduced to wreckage, cities burned to ash. We were winning the battle, but at what cost? And then in our moment of triumph, something happened. The Harbingers did something we never expected. They retreated. Their forces pulled back, ships breaking formation. They were running. We had won. But deep inside, we knew something was wrong. They weren't just retreating. They were preparing for what? We didn't know. But one thing was certain, this war wasn't over, not yet. We had forced the Harbingers into retreat. For the first time in history, we had pushed them back. They had invaded countless civilizations before us, destroyed entire species without resistance. But humanity? We had fought back. We had given them a war unlike any they had ever seen. And now they were withdrawing. We should have celebrated. But deep down, we knew something was wrong. They weren't just retreating. They were regrouping, preparing. The real war had not even begun. The Harbingers. True power. Our defenses had been shattered. Our strongest warriors had fallen. And before we could even catch our breath, the second wave began. The planet killers arrive. At first, we thought it was just a retreating fleet. Then we saw the new ships. Colossal, massive, unlike anything we had faced before. These weren't warships. They were annihilation engines. Ships the size of moons equipped with weapons capable of wiping out entire planets. And they were heading straight for us. The Harbingers hadn't just returned. They had brought their true army. And this time, they weren't taking prisoners. The massacre begins. The orbital defense grid fired first. Every cannon, every missile, every railgun, all aimed at the monstrosities descending from the sky. But it wasn't enough. Nothing we had could break their shields. The first planet killer fired. A beam of energy so powerful it ripped through mountains like paper. Entire sections of Exile's surface collapsed into fire and dust. Millions of civilians, gone in an instant. The desperate defense. We had no reinforcements, no backup plan. This was it. We had to fight with what we had left. Every last battleship in orbit moved to intercept. Every last soldier on the ground prepared to defend the last cities. Every last scientist. Engineer and survivor worked to keep power running for the shields. We were outmatched. We were outgunned, but we weren't going down without a fight. The underground war as the battle raged in space and on the surface. Another war began underground. The Harbingers had learned from their mistakes. They had deployed ground troops unlike any before. Not just foot soldiers, but something worse. Machines. Sentient. Self-replicating. Indestructible. They poured into our tunnels, our bunkers, our safe zones. They didn't just kill, they assimilated, corrupting everything they touched. The war wasn't just outside, it was now inside our walls. The last resort. We had one option left, one last chance to stop them. A weapon we had, kept hidden. A technology so dangerous we had sworn never to use it, but now we had no choice. If we were going to survive, we had to unleash hell. The planet was burning. Our defenses were collapsing. Our armies were dying. We had fought with everything we had. And yet, the Harbingers were unstoppable. Their annihilation engines continued their assault. Their ground forces spread like a virus. Their machines consumed everything in their path. Humanity was being erased, and we were out of time. The hidden weapon deep beneath the last surviving city. In an underground bunker that had remained sealed for years, a group of scientists made a terrible decision. They had been working in secret, developing a weapon that should never exist. A weapon so powerful, so dangerous, that it had been locked away even as the war began. But now it was our only hope. They called it Project Ragnarok, and it was the last thing the Harbingers would ever expect. The forbidden technology Project Ragnarok wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a superweapon. It was something far worse. Creation that defied nature itself. A weapon that could turn the enemy's power against them. It was built using reverse-engineered Harbinger technology, a system that could hack into their AI, a virus designed to corrupt their hive mind, a weapon that could overwrite their programming. We had spent years trying to unlock the secrets of their technology, and now we finally had our answer. If the Harbingers wanted to erase us from history, we would erase them first. The last counterattack. There was no more strategy, no more waiting. This was it. We launched everything we had left. The last of our battleships made a suicide run toward the Harbinger fleet. The final ground forces charged into the enemy horde. The surviving scientists and engineers worked to activate Project Ragnarok. The Harbingers had no idea what we were about to do, and by the time they realized it was already too late. The virus unleashed at exactly 0243 Galactic Standard Time, Project Ragnarok was activated. A single pulse of energy spread across the battlefield. At first, nothing happened. The Harbingers kept fighting. Their ships kept firing. Their machines kept marching. And then, everything stopped. The collapse of the Harbingers, it started slowly. A single Harbinger ship froze in place, then another, and another. Their weapons deactivated. Their soldiers stumbled. Their machines began shutting down. The virus was spreading through their systems, corrupting their hive mind, shutting down their command structure. For the first time in this entire war, the Harbingers were vulnerable, and humanity did not hesitate. The final push, we struck with everything we had left. Our remaining warships tore through their fleet. Our soldiers pushed forward, wiping out their forces. Our scientists worked to keep the virus spreading. And as the Harbingers collapsed, as their technology failed, as their ships fell from the sky, we knew we had won. Within hours, the Harbinger forces were destroyed. Their remaining ships tried to flee. Some of them vanished into deep space, But they were no longer a threat. For the first time in human history, the war was over. The last sacrifice. We had won. The Harbingers were crippled. Their fleet was shattered. Their soldiers lay motionless, their machines corrupted by the virus we had unleashed. But it wasn't over. Not yet, because deep in space, one last Harbinger ship remained, and it was the largest one of all. A ship that was not just a warship, it was a command center, a vessel containing the hive mind that controlled their entire species. If it escaped, if it survived, they would rebuild. They would return, and they would finish what they started. We couldn't let that happen. No matter the cost. The final mission, our fleets were exhausted, our defenses were ruined. We had nothing left to give, but there was one ship still operational, one final weapon, the Excalibur, warship built for this moment. It was the last of its kind, a dreadnought equipped with enough firepower to destroy a planet. But there was a catch. The ship's engines were damaged, its autopilot was non-functional, and its weapons could only be activated manually. Whoever piloted it would never come back. The volunteers. No one hesitated. Soldiers, engineers, pilots. They all stepped forward, but in the end, only one person could go. The one who had led this war from the beginning, Commander Elias Kane, a hero, a leader, and now, a martyr. He stepped onto the bridge of the Excalibur, knowing he would never set foot on solid ground again. But he didn't hesitate, because this was bigger than him, bigger than any one person. This was about saving humanity, and he was ready. The final charge. The Excalibur's engines roared to life. It broke free from the planet's atmosphere, heading straight for the last Harbinger command ship. The alien vessel began to retreat, trying to escape into deep space. But Kane wouldn't let it. He pushed the ship to its limits. The Excalibur's hull burned from the stress, every system flashed red. It was falling apart, but it kept going, straight toward the heart of the enemy. The last transmission, as Kane approached, he sent one final message to humanity, a message that would be remembered forever. Don't let this victory be the last. Rebuild, fight, survive, make sure the Harbingers never return. This is Commander Kane signing off, and then he fired. The Excalibur's main cannon unleashed a blast so powerful it tore through the Harbinger ship's core. The alien vessel imploded, its hive mind shattered, and in the explosion that followed, the Excalibur was gone. Kane was gone. But so were the Harbingers. The cost of victory humanity had won, but at a terrible cost. Earth was gone. Billions were dead. Our fleets were in ruins. We had survived, but we were not the same. And as we stood on the ashes of our last battlefield, we made a promise. Never again. We would rebuild. We would grow stronger. And if anything ever threatened us again, we would be ready. Because now, humanity knew how to fight. And the next time war came to our doorstep, we would be the ones knocking. The aftermath and humanity's future. The war was over, the Harbingers were gone, but the universe was silent, not with peace, but with emptiness, because victory had come at a terrible cost. We had survived, but we had lost everything. The ruins of a civilization. Earth was gone. A broken world floating in space burned to nothing but dust. The colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan? Destroyed. The mighty human empire that once spread across the stars? Erased. All that remained of humanity was us. A few million survivors, scattered across the last remaining ships and the ruins of exile. We were supposed to be extinct. But against all odds, we were still here, and that meant one thing. We still had a chance. The rebirth of mankind, the survivors gathered, leaders from every faction, every ship, every hidden bunker. For the first time in centuries, there were no nations, no politics, no divisions. There was only one species, one race standing at the edge of annihilation. And so we made a decision. Humanity would not fade into history. We would rise again. We would rebuild, stronger, smarter, deadlier, and if anything came for us again, we would never be caught unprepared. The final warning before the last Harbinger ship was destroyed, we had intercepted one final transmission. A message sent to an unknown location, translated into human language. It said only, they resisted. They survived. They are no longer weak. Begin the next phase. We didn't know who it was meant for. We didn't know who was listening, but we knew one thing for certain. This war was not the last war. There were others out there, other threats, other enemies, other conquerors waiting in the dark. And now they knew our name, they knew what we were capable of, and one day, they would come for us, the next chapter of humanity. So we prepared. We gathered the last scientists and engineers and told them to create weapons beyond imagination. We trained the next generation of warriors, so they would never be caught off guard. We sent ships into deep space searching for allies, resources, and enemies before they could find us. Because this time, we would not wait for the fight to come to us. We would be the ones bringing the war. We were no longer just survivors. We were no longer just humans. We had become something else. Something stronger. Something dangerous. Something unstoppable. And when the next enemy arrived, they wouldn't find a weak, broken race. They would find the warriors of Earth, and they would learn that humanity never dies. The legacy of the final stand years later, as our cities rose again and our fleets spread through the stars, a monument was built in the heart of our new world, a tribute to the warriors who fought and died for our survival. And at the base of that monument, written in steel, was a single phrase, a warning, a promise, a declaration to the universe. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. We fight. Remember humanity.